Thank you for attending the first of 3 webinar series for the ASCM Enterprise Certification. Today's webinar is ASCM Enterprise Certification Overview. I am Gabriella Welch, Director of Certification at the Association for Supply Chain Management, ASCM. We're very excited to provide you with an overview of our newest certification, the ASCM Enterprise Certification. This certification is a corporate-level designation developed exclusively for supply chains. Before we begin, I'd like to run through just a few details. If you look at the toolbar on the right of your screen, you'll see a questions box. To ask your question, simply type it in the designated box and hit send to submit your question. You can do this at any time during the presentation. Now, I will be giving you a lot of information today, but I did set aside some time for a general Q&A where I will answer as many questions as time permits. If we don't get to your question today, don't worry. We will consolidate all submitted questions, get those answered, and post them on the ASCM website. This online event is being recorded. We will provide you with a webinar audio and PowerPoint slides along with all of the viewers' questions and our responses over the next few days. And we'll send that to you via email to all those who've registered for this webinar. Feel free to share that link with your colleagues, supervisors, or organization members. Okay, so today we will try to get through 4 topics: an overview of the certification, which includes what is the ASCM Enterprise Certification, why it was developed, what are the benefits towards obtaining that certification, and our corporate motivators. Secondly, we'll walk through the 5 steps of the ASCM Enterprise Certification process. Third, we will provide you with additional resources. And finally, if we have enough time, we'll answer some of your questions. So let's get started. What is the ASCM Enterprise Certification? This certification is the industry's first and only corporate supply chain designation, and it measures social responsibility, economic sustainability, and ecological stewardship. This program aims to empower organizations to reach goals, improve results, and be competitive in today's global business world. This unique designation touches on the supply chain management practices that span across the plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable, and it incorporates the entire APICS body of knowledge, including the SCORE model, CSCP, CPIM, and CLTD programs. It also leverages the SCORE industry best practices. Because of its cross-functional dynamic capabilities that can be applied to many different and unique supply chains, the SCORE model is an integral part of this enterprise certification. This new certification also utilizes established industry initiatives in quality, sustainability, social responsibility, economic excellence, and risk by incorporating best practices from, but not limited to, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the United Nations Global Compact, and the Global Reporting Initiative. The framework for this program consists of 3 pillars that represent specific aspects of an organization's supply chain. As mentioned in the last slide, it's based on the 3 pillars of ethical, economic, and ecological. Each pillar contains key considerations within specified areas of supply chain processes of the plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. The enterprise certification also measures enablement through strategy, governance, workforce, and technology initiatives, along with impacts to key stakeholders, which include the community, customers, government, and suppliers, which you can see depicted in the circular chart on your right. Criteria for ethical supply chain practices include topics like the review of anti-corruption and antitrust, codes of conduct, confidentiality of information, and human rights and labor practices. The criteria for economic supply chain practices include topics like the review for business integrity and company reputation, enterprise risk and crisis management, and supply chain strategy. And then finally, the criteria for ecological include topics like the review for circular economy, energy, water, and waste, and product life cycle stewardship. These key elements set the foundation for the enterprise standards and are the criteria to be used to evaluate an organization for certification. So we just discussed what it measures and how it empowers, but why was it developed? So we are in a consumer-driven world, right? So we think about the voice of the corporate customer and where we want to go with the consumer. The industry has always had risk events, some of them major, some of them minor. But I think over the last few years, with new technology enhancements and certainly with social media expansion, consumer awareness has been at the forefront. Why? Because the risk impacts the organization, the suppliers, and the consumers. So consumers want to know more and more that what they are buying is economically, ethically, and ecologically responsible. And not just that, but they want full transparency from the product or service all the way through the supplier. Over the past few years, we've heard from organizations or corporations that they want standards that cover these three major pillars. Now, you do have certifications like the ISO for quality systems, non-GMO, fair trade, and some others. There are a lot of other certifications out there that provide consumer confidence that these organizations are not only meeting a specific set of standards, but they're maintaining those standards, and it has a far-reaching effect to their suppliers as well. And these certifications and standards are important, but there isn't one that covers all three pillars within your supply chain, and that is why the Enterprise Certification was created. There's no other certification out there that touches these three dimensions across the supply chain. This certification shows that you're adhering to a set of standards with full transparency and you're committed to making an impact. You're doing what the consumer is asking for. Even if you don't pursue the certification, but you adopt and integrate these standards, you're demonstrating to the corporate and consumer community your awareness of the three dimensions. You're utilizing best practices and ASCM body of knowledge, validating your strategy, refreshing your continuous improvement, and so much more. Throughout this presentation, I'll be walking you through several of our tools and resources that we are providing you for free. Now, it's not just free to our ASCM members, but it's free to any organization or any person, regardless of your interest in pursuing certification. Why are we doing this for free? ASCM is committed to making an impact. We're making the world better in supply chain. We're part of the world's largest sustainability initiative. We're a signatory to the UN Global Impact. So we're committed to aligning strategies and operations with universal principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, and taking actions that advance societal goals. We see, view, and measure impact. We see supply chain as end-to-end from our supplier's supplier to our customer's customer. We view impact through the eyes of our stakeholders, our students, our professionals, corporations, consumers, and patients. We measure impact using the triple bottom line approach, assessing an organization's economic, social, and environmental performance. We know a risk event is going to happen, but we want you to be prepared to minimize that risk and to show transparency and awareness that your organization, your supply chains, your business units have integrated best practices and responsibility across all three dimensions. But ASCM didn't develop this alone. Overall, we had 22 comparative global frameworks that we reviewed, over 50 companies that participated in the development of this program. And then in addition, the standards that were created were validated across several organizations, a task force of subject matter experts, a certification committee, and 3 pilot organizations. What are some of the benefits for pursuing certification for your supply chain? So as I mentioned before, awareness and transparency are key elements for the consumer. These elements serve as a differentiator in the market and the industry. We believe that you will gain a competitive advantage through showcasing economic, ecological, and ethical supply chain practices, demonstrate transparency to prospective customers and consumers, ensure suppliers align with your organization's values, manage accountability to support your organization's ethical standards, embrace a culture of social responsibility, and showcase your supply chain excellence. So you may ask what other motivators drove the creation of this unique designation. The standards guide supports, measures, and integrates meaning. It supports current and future corporate sustainability strategies and programs. It measures progress towards its supply chain's ability to support circular business models, and it integrates with Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the Baldrige, the UN Global Impact, and other initiatives. By obtaining and maintaining certification, it'll recognize corporate sustainability leaders and provide a platform for competitive advantage with consumer patients, a clean supply chain. But even beyond certification, the standards provide a framework to align supply chain strategy, supplier development, continuous improvement, and cross-functional organizational design. This certification is the first process-based, unbiased supply chain standard that incorporates the body of knowledge from the APICS CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, and SCORE, and equally as important with standards and best practices of other sustainability initiatives. The Enterprise Certification Program is comprised of three major elements: supply chain assessments, enterprise standards, and the enterprise certification. These three elements are incorporated within the 5 steps of the certification process that we'll go through. The first step of this process is ASCM Enterprise Assessment. ASCM is providing organizations with 2 supply chain assessment tools. These tools, again, are free of charge and should be used to help organizations start their journey in adopting the ASCM Enterprise Standards. To gain access to these assessments, you just simply complete a short form and then you'll be sent to an online assessment. It's that quick and that easy. You can even pass the links on to your colleagues, anyone else in your organization, and you can complete this as many times as you want across as many supply chains or business units as you want. So we encourage you to visit these assessments periodically to compare how your supply chain maturity level changes or improves over time. So I mentioned 2 self-assessments or 2 supply chain assessments. The first assessment is a very quick 15-question, 5-minute questionnaire. The great thing about this short assessment is that it allows you to rate your supply chain in a small sampling of categories within the 3 pillars, providing insight into the enterprise certification. It also gives you a little snapshot of the topics covered during the certification process. If you aren't quite sure about diving right into the enterprise program, this gives you a small glimpse into the 3 pillars as well as a quick view of your supply chain maturity. Again, it's free and it's an optional assessment that's available to any organization. The second assessment tool that we provide is the Enterprise Supply Chain Maturity Assessment. The important word here is maturity. This assessment is similar to the questionnaire, except it's a deeper dive into your supply chain. So although it is a longer assessment, we estimate it takes about 30 minutes to complete. It actually helps you identify the general maturity level of your supply chain across all the 3 dimensions, the economic, ecological, and ethical, and then across the 3 maturity levels, which are developing, improving, and leading. So why is this assessment important and why is it necessary to complete before you begin your certification journey? It's important because, number 1, you can compare more than one of your supply chains. 2, it not only provides you with a measurement of your maturity, but also helps you gauge your readiness towards certification. And finally, it allows you to compare your maturity to other organizations. Now, it's not required to complete before certification, but we do highly recommend it. As part of the maturity, the longer assessment, we're also including a benchmark report. So once you complete the maturity assessment, you'll be provided with a summary of your responses and where you stand on the maturity level, whether it's developing, leading, or improving. It will also provide you with an aggregate data report based on industry-wide responses to the assessment. So this benchmarking will also help determine links between adherence to the standards and your company's performance. Again, it's 30 minutes for the assessment. It enables you to rate your supply chain in various categories aligned with the 3 pillars of the enterprise program. Step 2 is the ASCM Enterprise Standards and Readiness. The enterprise certification standards can be used to assess an organization's alignment to the 3 pillars that make up the program, regardless of your organization's interest in becoming certified. You can download the standards at no cost to you. Again, just simply fill out a quick form with your contact information, and then we'll have access to the e-download version of the standards. For those of you who are going to pursue certification, these standards also serve as the criteria for which an organization will be measured when pursuing this certification. So this is the first step in preparing for readiness. Components of the standards include the standards, evidence, metrics, and key questions. So the standards are best practices and benchmarks that organizations should follow to achieve supply chain excellence. Evidence, those are detailed documents or policies or other materials that serve to validate or show evidence of an organization's adherence to the standards. Then you have the metrics, and those are where most of the standards associated with supply chain process excellence include a set of KPIs, or the key performance indicators, that are used to measure and assess the outcome of supply chain process execution. And then you have the key questions, and these are really important questions organizations should consider in determining if they are adhering to best practices as outlined in the standards. And these are actually questions that ASCM evaluators may ask you during the evaluation process. So I won't actually go into further detail because the second part of this webinar series will go into more in depth into explaining how to read the standards and how to apply it or integrate it into your supply chain. Step 3 is the ASCM Enterprise registration process. So here you're now ready to start the certification process. And then just to mention steps 3, 4, and 5 that we'll talk about very high level, because they will be covered in the final or the third webinar series in this process. The next few slides will just be high-level overview, but if you are interested in reviewing this information before the next webinars, detailed information can be found in the handbook, and we'll provide you all those links by the end of this presentation. Okay, so we've gone through the assessments, we've gone through the standards, and now we're going to get through the registration process. So the first step of this step is to be prepared. So prior to registering, you need to visit the registration tools. And this toolkit includes documents to help you prepare for the registration. The first of which is the document checklist. This is the basic set of documents which will need to be uploaded for the registration. This is typically the most time-consuming of the process, since it includes or may require you to contact several stakeholders or departments within your organization. Next, there's the scoping spreadsheet, which you'll see here is the upload template. This is actually used to determine the scope of your evaluation. So you'd want to document which supply chain or business unit you'd like to be evaluated, and then which sites apply to that business unit or supply chain. And then finally, we include the standards link, just kind of as a helpful tool to review it again, ensure you meet the criteria before you actually move on to the registration. So the registration process is very high level. Once you're ready for the registration process, you'll access the registration link, complete the application, you'll upload all of the requested documents found on that checklist, and then you'll make a payment or you can request an invoice. And further details will be available in the third and the final webinar series. So again, I won't go into too much detail on that. Step 4 is the evaluation process. So for the evaluation process, if you've registered now, you've submitted all your documentation, we've reviewed it. And again, we'll go into a deeper dive in the third webinar series. But we want to make you aware of this evaluation process for those of you who are going through this. For those of you who may have gone through ISO certification or the audit process, it is a very similar process. So following the approval of your application and the documentation, ASCM will assign an approved enterprise evaluator. During the evaluation process, the evaluator may ask or may request additional documentation relevant to the standards. They may also conduct interviews with various site personnel to gather more information, and they'll utilize all of the standards and metrics, or at least the appropriate ones based on your scope, when conducting these evaluations. So a site evaluation, once a site evaluation has been completed, the evaluator conducts an on-site readout of the evaluation results for your organization. Please note that the evaluator provides a final report and a recommendation only. It's only a recommendation because that's what's sent over to the Enterprise Committee, who makes the final certification determination. If and once you're awarded the certification, then we'll go ahead and provide you with an official report. You'll receive a certification kit to recognize the achievement of each evaluated and approved supply chain or business unit. And this kit will include things like a press release template, your certificate and an award, a branded electronic logo that you can place on your materials or your website, and then your organization will be listed as a certified enterprise organization on our site with specific information around which business unit or supply chain was certified. And the final step to our journey is recertification. Once an organization has been awarded the Enterprise Certification designation, it actually doesn't end there. It's just the start of your certification journey. It's valid for 3 years. However, on an annual basis, so years at the end of the first full year, so years 1 and 2, you'll submit a maintenance evaluation application, and it's just to ensure continued alignment with the standards. Then after the 3rd full year, an organization must recertify its supply chain or business unit every 3 years to keep the certification active. And then to recertify, you're just required to submit a new registration, complete the evaluation process, essentially start all over again, except we will store all of your documents, so you don't have to submit all of those documents. We'll just, you can provide us with some improvements or some out-of-date documents that need to be updated. So that is the recertification process and the maintenance process. So those are the 5 steps to the certification process. Again, we will go in a deeper dive in the next few webinars, Webinar 2 for the standards and Webinar 3 for more in-depth on the registration process. And then finally, we want to provide you with some enterprise resources to take back to your organization or to review. So today's webinar, again, is the first of our 3-part webinar series. And it's just an overview of the program. We want to provide you details on major components of the Enterprise Certification. Next scheduled webinar is to review the Enterprise Standards. That is scheduled for September 12th. And then following is the organization's journey through the registration process on September 23rd. We hope you'll join us for the rest of the series by registering today. You can click on that link in the presentation. It's a free webinar. Or you can visit ascm.org/events for a full list of all APICS and ASCM hosted events. As a reminder, a copy of this webinar recording and materials, so this presentation, will be emailed to you after this webinar and will be available on demand at ascm.org. So here we put together a helpful guide of quick links using the 5-step process. However, if you have any questions or need additional information, we're definitely happy to help. You can contact us at service@ascm.org, and again, we'll provide you that contact information at the end of this presentation. So now we have Q&A forum. I provided you a lot of information. Again, it's being recorded. You'll have access to this. We'll send you an link via email. But we do want you to submit your questions. Again, select the Questions tab on the toolbar on the right side of your screen, enter question, and hit send. And then I'll go through some of these questions and answer as many as I can today. As a reminder, if we don't get to your question, submit it anyway. All questions will be captured and answered and posted in a Q&A document along with our responses. Okay, so I see a first question here is, my organization may be interested. Who can I contact to set up a conference call with my department head? Absolutely. You can contact us at service@ascm.org or by calling the number listed here, our 800 number. They will contact you to the appropriate team, and we'll not only set up a call with you, but we can definitely provide you with additional materials about this program. We can set up a virtual call, or if you have additional team members that you want on the call, so perhaps there might be several department heads that need to make a decision on this program, we can definitely work with you in your organization. Let's see, I have another question. I don't see any training mentioned. Is there training involved or required? Yeah, that's a really good question. So training is not required. However, we are setting up a host of standards review training, and that's about a 2-day face-to-face training. And really it's for organizations that are interested in better understanding the standards and maybe asking specific questions about how the standards might or might not apply to particular areas of their supply chain. In addition, if you want more intimate training, we can always work with your organization. We can schedule training at your location. Maybe you have more staff or stakeholders. Again, just contact us and we can walk you through the process and answer any questions. So I see a couple more questions coming in, but I think that's all the time we have. So we'll collect those questions and provide those to you at the end. And as a reminder, we'll be posting this on ascm.org. We'll send you a link, and you can feel free to share that link with your colleagues, supervisors, or other members of your organization. Thank you for attending today and for sending us your questions and comments. We hope that you will all stay tuned for our future ASCM Enterprise webinars coming soon. All content and materials included in this online event are the property of ASCM and are protected by the United States and international copyright laws. All rights are reserved.